right, now we are on the last section of topic 5. Woo, you're almost done. Topic 5, yes. So this is 5.7, labor unions. And as we are coming up on Labor Day, you can see this is one of the reasons why we have Labor Day, is to celebrate the fact that people work. And you can see here, like, there used to be parades of people that, you know, these are the people that work at the United Textile Workers of America. Celebrating. There's people actually out there with jobs working. So we're going to talk a little bit about why labor unions formed, history of the labor movement in the United States. So we had like this, you know, this rise in the labor movement, and then we've had a decline. And then how do labor and management negotiate contracts? So you've probably heard about a strike. This would be an organized work stoppage to force an employer to address union demands. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be union demands. I think in Oklahoma, teachers all called in sick one day to try to show them how important teachers are and to get better pay. Oklahoma had really bad pay, worse than most states. I remember when I lived in Dallas, Texas, there was a General Motors strike and people didn't go to work. Right to work laws. This is a law that bans mandatory union membership. Used to be if you had a particular job and there was a union, you had to join that union. But this law kind of repealed that. So like if I'm a teacher and if there's a teachers union, I do not have to join that union. And it used to be you had to. And the problem with being forced to join the union was if the union decided all the workers needed to strike, all the union members needed to strike, guess what? You were on strike. And if you're on strike, you're not getting paid. So that allowed some people to say, I don't want to be part of the union. So if the union held a strike, the non-union people could still work and keep their paycheck. Blue collar and white collar workers, I use these terms all the time. Blue collar workers tend to be your manual labor, hands-on, carpenters, plumbers, electricians. It's usually a manufacturing job. Blue collar workers earn an hourly wage, not salary. White collar workers, these tend to be professional or clerical jobs, sitting at a desk, and they tend to earn a salary. It kind of comes to from your white collar workers, they would wear white shirts, and your blue collar workers, your laborers, would wear blue shirts because obviously you wouldn't wear a white shirt, you'd get them dirty. And some people, I know me, when I graduated college, I'm like, I want a job and I want to be with a salary. People will say, I'm salary. Yeah, no. I've been salary. My husband's been salary. As a teacher, I'm salary. So that means if I happen to work 80 hours a week, I make the same amount of money. I have a friend that works for AT&T, and when they ask him to work 80 hours a week, he's getting time and a half for the extra 40 hours. So when they call him and they're like, hey, you know, God, we just need you to work an extra 10 hours this week. He's like, okay. And he's making like 40 something an hour because he's been with them like 30 something years. So his hourly wage is really high. When he gets time and a half, and then there's certain days you get double pay. So if you're making $20 an hour, you're now making $40 an hour. Whereas if you're on salary, you don't get anything extra. If they call you in, like my husband gets called in sometimes he has to work on his day off. He doesn't get any extra pay because he's salary. Collective bargaining, this is where the union and the company management get together to try to negotiate a new labor contract, and that could be wages, that could be benefits. Mediation, we have this in several different ways. You have this a lot in child custody cases, divorces, and again, we have this with working conditions where, you know, two parties that are trying to come to an agreement, maybe they're at an impasse and they can't decide, they'll go to a mediator who's a neutral person, and that mediator will try to run the meeting and get the two parties to come to some sort of an agreement. They haven't been able to on their own, but this neutral person can get them to that. And then arbitration. When you can't get both sides to agree, when you've gone through mediation, you can't do that. Basically what this is, and it tends to be in a court, is both parties go to court, they present their side. If I'm the judge, I would listen and go, you know what? This is what I think needs to happen. You need to do this, you need to do that, bang my gavel, and you have to abide by whatever I decide. You're legally binding if you go to arbitration. Now that can be good because, again, if the judge rules in my favor and I get more than I thought I was going to, I'm sitting here celebrating. But if the judge rules against me and makes me do more than I was willing to do, or pay more, or something, or not get as much, then I'm sitting here going, God, it stung. Maybe I should have just come to a mutual agreement with them before. I might not have lost so much. So organized labor. Again, we have Labor Day coming up. Most of us just go, yay, it's a day off of school. It's a Monday. It's a 3-day weekend. Yes, I've been guilty of that. But the origins go back all the way to 1882. And you have a labor leader, and he made this suggestion, we just need to celebrate the American worker, that people are out there working hard. And they did a march in New York City in a parade. There were 10,000 workers, and they called themselves the Knights of Labor. 12 years after that, Congress made it a federal holiday so that workers could spend it any way they wished. You can go to the beach, you can go to the picnic. If you want to do a parade, you can. It is literally a day to say, hey, thank you for working. We celebrate the American worker, and use this day however you want. Bet you didn't know that. Again, here is a parade in 1934 where people were celebrating and proud. Hey, this is my job. This is what I do. Now, if you look at this chart, this figure here, you can see this is the union membership from 1940 to 2012. And, Great Depression was in 1930. So we have this rise in membership, then it kind of starts tapering off a little in the 60s and 70s. And you can see now, turn of the century, it's low. And what would be reasons for this? Some reasons can be that, conditions were bad. We needed unions to fix stuff over here. Maybe, rats, like I said, rats, and people being forced to work 80 hours a week and not having the 40 hours. And because of these unions, a lot of things have been fixed. We have OSHA and stuff, so they're not needed as much in the modern day. We also have that law too, I forgot, where there's no longer mandatory membership. You had some mandatory membership back here too, where you were required to be a member. So we've got the union movement, the labor movement. It had a lot of obstacles. There was some violence. When we have this union movement, it's kind of like the movements we're seeing now in society with the whole racial equality. Sometimes those movements turn violent. I've seen some of the most peaceful protests and things that have warmed my heart. And then there have been other ones that have turned violent. And that's, certain individuals just lose it and turn something violent. And the same thing happened with this union movement. There would be individuals that would do something and turn something peaceful into something violent. Yeah. Working conditions in the late 1800s, they were not good. Children had to work in the factories. The conditions were terrible. I know this is a drawing, but look, there was thread all over the floor. Imagine if you had to step through all of that. Parents might be having kids left and right just so they could send them to work and have more money. That's not fair. Here are big events in the labor movement. You've got the Knights of Labor were founded in 1869. Here we have a railroad strike, 1894. They were striking against the railroad. Here you've got some fires at the Shirtwaist Company, and that spurred a lot of workplace safety laws to come into effect because, you know, it happened at a business and people died. You got a strike by the Ladies Garment Workers Union, and their whole issue, the reason they went was they wanted shorter work days and more pay. 1932, they outlawed yellow dog contracts, and they gave protection to unions. 1935, that was when workers had the right to organize. It actually gave them the right to organize. So that hasn't been that long. We're only talking, what, 85 years? 1938 is when we created a minimum wage. Again, not even 100 years yet. And it banned child labor. So before that, you could make your kids work. 1947, TaftHartley Act passes the right to work laws. So that's one of those where you do not have to join a union. It was optional. In the 70s, we had this a lot of big activity by employers to prevent or hinder union activity. Because, you know, if you've ever looked at one, it's a, I don't know, sometimes it can be a win-win situation. Sometimes it can be a lose-lose. Like I said, when I lived in Dallas, Texas, the GM workers went on strike, and it was just for more pay. And when they calculated all the money they went without on strike, and they got like $1 an hour raise or something, it was going to take them 13 years at the new raise wage to make back the months of pay they lost. So it's like, did you really win? On paper, yes. So Cesar Chavez, we got the first farm workers union. So we've got these labor agreements with growers, and we need farmers. We need farmers. And in the 2000s, we started to see an increase in public sector unions. However, even though we started to see an increase in the public sector unions, overall membership in unions was started to go down. Yeah. So why is there a decline in labor unions? I touched on it a little bit. Like, have they already done their good and, you know, fixed most of the problems? People had the right to work laws, so they didn't have to join. Another reason is, you know, some people, they get power and they get cocky and they start to abuse that power. Some unions did that too. Some of them started doing the feather bedding, you know, what we talked about, where they were trying to keep people employed that weren't needed. And that's not good. That's costing businesses more money. You know, companies need to be efficient if they want to stay competitive. And if the unions were trying to feather bed certain employees, then that's not being efficient. Here you've got Robert Taft. He co-sponsored the TaftHartley Act. He's walking through a group of picketers. They're protesting in 1948, and that act gave people the right to not be a member of the union. So if you were a member of the union and they said, we're striking, you had to strike. If you're not a member of the union, you didn't have to. Here is manufacturing as a percent of GDP. We're comparing 1959 to 2012. And you can see we have a decline in manufacturing jobs. Excuse me. Just don't have as many anymore. We've got computers, we've got robotics that have taken over a lot of these manufacturing jobs. And so this is another reason why there's a decline in union membership because, again, there's not as many manufacturing jobs out there. So the workers appoint a union the right to represent them. And that could be at a factory. It could be like a collaborative at several different businesses that have the same type of employees. You know, once they accept that union, whatever the company is that the employees work for, they're required by law to bargain with the union in good faith. And what that means is if they have to negotiate in good faith, they have to sit down, they have to really try. They can't sit down and say, all right, we're going to talk just to say we're going to talk, but my answer is no. But we need to make this last for an hour, so okay, let's just talk. I already know my mind's made up. That's not in good faith. You have to, in good faith, try to come to an agreement. Okay, it's required by law. So when they get together, there's this huge bargaining process. You know, it's, you know, what do you want? What do I want? What if I give you that? What are you going to give me? And that can take time. Here you've got the Writers Guild of America West. They were in contract negotiation that took place several months in 2008 and 2007. Here are the number of strikes that we've had over 60 years. And interesting, it fell and then went back up in the 70s. We had huge stagflation in the 70s. That's high unemployment and high inflation. And you can see down here, you know, many of you are probably saying, oh, I can't remember the last time I heard that an industry went on strike. I know we've had some days where people like walked out or walkout days, but actually been on strike for a length of time. You know, used to be commonplace, and now they're not so much anymore. Okay, they're just not. And yay, jump up, celebrate, do a little dance. You are done with topic 5 now. See you in class.